Morning, guys. Obviously, for those guys who are listening, we're just going to give it 30 more seconds to just for any stragglers are going to come through, and then we'll start the presentation or the webinar. Bear with us, please. Well, I think maybe we should just kick things off. So, morning, guys. Obviously, welcome everybody, and appreciate you coming to us on a Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. It's quite exciting for ourselves. I mean, the launch of what we've been doing at Modality around the secure landing zones and what we're doing today. I've got some panelists with me, obviously, which I'll introduce shortly. But so my name's Matt O'Connor. I've been in the industry for about 15 years. I've got 10 years as a cloud specialist in the Azure arena, so helping businesses transform and realize the value of what Microsoft Azure can bring to a business. My colleague Matt McAvoy, I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi everyone, morning. I'm Matt McAvoy. I am the lead principal architect at Modality. I've been working in the cloud space for many years now, helping customers understand how to innovate and how to mitigate risk. And also I'm probably the person that has built the secure landing zone from the ground up, from architecture using the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework.
Thanks, Matt. And we've got two great people from Microsoft that need no introduction, but we will anyway. So I've got Sergio. Do you want to feel free to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Sergio Carrillo. You may ask yourself. I'm Portuguese. I've been working in IT for, I would say, a long time, across regions even. So it's been a pleasure to be expanding my knowledge and, my reach in the UK. I've been working with Microsoft. It's coming to 9 years now. I love technology. Technology can't work without people. So I love to keep gelling those two things together, and it's a pleasure to be here with Modality today.
Thanks, Sergio. And last but no means least, Luke.
Hi everyone, my name is Luke Fussell. I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, working with our partner teams. I focus on cloud adoption framework, infrastructure and automation, and also very happy to be here with Modality today.
Fantastic. Well, guys, I just wanted to go through a bit of an agenda, so what you can sort of see and you'll hear from us today. So I'll go into a brief bit about Modality. So those who you maybe worked with us past or don't know us at all, so I'll talk around Modality. We'll do a little bit around the cloud adoption framework, some information around obviously what the right foundations are, and then obviously we'll go around landing zones from Azure and from our standpoint what we've done in order to sort of move this forward from a secure landing zone point of view. So Modality, those of you who don't know us, those of you who do, so our heritage, or Microsoft heritage, has largely been around unified communications. So everything from the inception of Link, Skype for Business, right the way through to Teams. So we've got a great capability, or had a great capability across everything within that arena. The things you won't be aware of is a lot of our intellectual IP, or all of our intellectual IP, is hosted and built in Azure. So we work with enterprise clients, building out our own services in the Azure platform. So that is a closely guarded secret, which is one of the things that we've now started to realise the power of Microsoft Azure, and obviously bringing our knowledge and our experience to that market. So yes, it's quite interesting times for us, and we look forward to hopefully working with you in the future. But that's Modality in a nutshell. I wanted to pass across here because to one of our colleagues at Microsoft. The reason why is, I mean, I could sit here and talk for the next half an hour about the cloud adoption framework, but I don't think I'll do it as much justice as Sergio will. So if I can pass across to yourself, Sergio, if that's all right, and we can talk through that.
Yeah, sure. Well, cloud adoption framework, some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not, and either way is more than fair enough. Is in a way a lot of guidance, and is a lengthy kind of set of information you may have to go through. But let me help you understand better what it is and why it's important, right? So the Cloud Adoption Framework, as in CAF for the acronym, is nothing less than the consolidation of a lengthy cloud operating model that existed for various years, and really getting that into a common set of methodologies, guidance, and tooling to tackle not only those operational aspects, but more importantly, gel people, processes, and technology for more effective and faster adoption of cloud technologies sitting in Azure. So you can see that fundamentally as Microsoft's change management framework in broader terms, let's say, for what Azure is concerned. What I have seen and what we have seen at Microsoft ever since Azure was born in 2009 is that too many IT scenarios became more complex, not because of the technology itself, right? It's becoming so much more commoditized these days. So, but much more importantly, because of the speed of adoption that's required. So better translating those desirable business outcomes into an effective whole new set of software-defined components and capabilities is critical to succeed in this new era of IT cloud solutions. So CAF is therefore important not only for Microsoft, but also for partners like Modality, with who we have been really very successfully been working with and very closely to drive business and organizational benefits that organizations want to achieve as a result, right? So CAF, in a way, it helps with defining the right strategy to be delivered for the right reasons at the right time, while governed and managed as much as possible, really, from the start, instead of having that as an after-the-fact sort of element, as previously historically done in IT. And for many years, I've seen that. So thankfully, with cloud, we've been pushing a lot harder towards those angles. And just to finish off on one note here, right? So landing zones, you may see that as part of these pillars. It sits there. Or more importantly, even in the case of Modality, right there, secure landing zones are a key artifact developed in conjunction with ourselves at Microsoft to empower our joint customers to really achieve more while adopting Azure at scale. So I hope that really sets the tone of why this is relevant for us all, let me say that. But of course, one thing is saying, another thing is doing. So yeah, I hope Modality and ourselves through this webinar can help you understand a bit better how that kind of works. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Sergio. Really appreciate that. Thank you. So, guys, I think from my perspective, when you look at the cloud, you've got to use the analogy of what are you going to build. I like to use the analogies around use it from a house or a stadium or a skyscraper. In order to get to the cloud, you need to do some things obviously before you get there, in order to understand obviously the processes you go through. So you've got to look at blueprints, you've got to look at designs, you've got to make sure that you've got the right foundations in place, which I think is critical to anything that you build. And if you think of the landing zone as your foundation, because no foundation is created equal. If you imagine from a business perspective, if you're trying to create a skyscraper, you want to have a solid foundation so you can scale and automate. And I think one of the things that we see from customers is when they adopt the cloud aggressively, but not using the right foundations, it creates a lot of pain points. And what myself and Matt McAvoy like to refer to as accidental IT, which can cause a lot of pain points around cost management and various other things. And from my perspective, Sergio and Luke, I don't know what sort of pain points that you guys see from not having the right foundations and not having the right landing zone in place.
I love this sort of analogy here, right? Because one thing is to be said, right? The right foundations are established through the first few baby steps, as in the planning exercise, defining the right strategy. You may not see that as critical if you're building like a shed or a small house, but if we look towards the right, building a stadium or anything more complex, you can't really go ahead without a focused planning exercise, defining the right strategy, what's there to be achieved. But when you get actually to the ground and you need to get going with it, it needs to happen the right way. So what we have seen, very briefly, let me touch on some stories here. We have heard, some of you may be familiar of this concept of bill shock. So that's one of the most kind of compelling events that have been driving a better understanding of what cloud really means. Okay, it's all very shiny, it's all amazing, incredible. You know, I've been through IT so many years, and it's just, I can't believe it at times. You know, I would have loved to have had this 20 years ago. But in a way, right, you know, if you adopt it too quickly, as Matt was alluding to, then you may just not do it right. You know, the cost management elements of the story aren't there. So it's so easy to deploy virtual machines. And we have seen customers like, you know, not governing the environment from the start, not having the right foundations again, and then arrive at that kind of moment when, oh, the bill is so much higher, we can't handle this. Likewise, you know, from a security standpoint and governance standpoint, you know, leaving those things for and after the fact, then it's too risky. So we have experienced and unfortunately had to help customers to get off from data breach scenarios because, you know, the right kind of technologies weren't used, for example, to protect endpoints that were, you know, in fairness, initially exposed because, you know, the option was there for customers to deploy them as they wish. But we had to even transition that to a place where, okay, it's all just endpoints are locked externally unless those workloads are really purposefully published to be accessed externally, so that we could prevent, you know, customers from, you know, unlocking the doors for the outside world, right? So, but all of that can be achieved in a very different way today. So I think that's the story here, is, you know, getting into yourselves into a better place, really.
Yeah, I think I just want to add to what Sergio and Matt have said as well, is your foundation is not just around technology and it's not just around security. It's about having the right stakeholders. It's about having the right people in place and the right planning in place. Because what you'll find is that 9 times out of 10, you will build your foundation based on the model of a house and try and end up with a skyscraper. And as we all know, effectively, that will just fall over or will fail. So it's your foundation is about strategy, architecture, security, and then the principles around governing that and managing that further, and understand what you've actually built compared to what you said you were going to build.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Sergio. And I think, obviously, you know, from our perspective, again, you know, we've got our own iteration, which we'll talk upon shortly. But I think, again, we've got Microsoft, obviously, a panelist with ourselves today. And what I wanted to do is really get Luke's perception, really, obviously, on an Azure landing zone, why Microsoft created the landing zone. I think that's hugely important today. So, Luke, if you know, if you want to take it over from here, and we can have a quick chat through it.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so at Microsoft, we've got a lot of experience working with organizations now on journey to cloud, and Cloud Adoption Framework documentation's really the place where we've built to surface that experience and help others really accelerate that cloud journey. So in the past, you already really mentioned it when we talked through the last slide, but we've seen organizations grow organically, and that can sometimes lead to that lack of scalability, lack of maturity, which can become a blocker later on down the line. So where landing zones come into this, so this is within the ready pillar of Cloud Adoption Framework. It's really an area where organizations can land modular workloads that are scalable, secure, cost-effective, and resilient, and allow you to democratize sort of resources and subscriptions to hand them over to application teams and infrastructure teams to allow them to deploy new workloads quickly. So you can hand over cloud resourcing on sort of day one, rather than have a process of potentially days or weeks to actually get ready to deploy new workloads within the cloud. And inherently, landing zones, we want to have key services available and ready to go for things like operational management, networking, security. So in a building analogy, these things would be having the electricity, the water, the gas turned on from day one.
Yeah, and am I right in thinking as well, Luke, isn't it? So a landing zone, it's great to adopt from the start, isn't it? So you have the right solid foundations to, you know, to move into. So you can create the automation at scale, and you can create the security and governance at the start. But even if you've already adopted Azure, you know, you've already gone down that journey, you can still implement landing zones, can't you, even though you're further through, because it helps you create a better foundation, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something it's definitely good to have in at the start, because it's going to allow you to grow much more quickly within that a sort of cloud environment and not end up tripping over later down the line. But if you do end up in a situation where you don't have this in place and you've built everything, like I said, in that sort of organic way, then it's absolutely something that can be brought in later on to sort of enable that to then grow around it. So you can almost start with putting in the initial foundations to some extent from as you would do it from a new implementation, and you can fit your existing environments in to that environment and grow around it, and eventually develop that initial environment into the new best practice world.
Yeah, I suppose it'd be the same as if you're adding different teams into, you're looking at adding a dev environment and things like that. You can put the right guardrails and the parameters in place to make sure that the landing zone is secure, to give guardrails for cost management so they don't get bill shock as well. So I suppose it's it's a fully adaptable service, not just now but in the future as well. So you can keep moving the environment forward. So okay, fantastic. And
Absolutely.
guys, oh sorry, Matt. Somebody want to go? Okay. So from our point of view, so Modality, again, the secure landing zone piece is a piece of work that myself and Matt McAvoy have been working on to bring into Modality more recently. So if you can imagine the SLZ or a secure landing zone, it gives our customers an opportunity to look at a rapidly deployable baseline. So essentially, it gives the Azure platform build from the start. So we give you the tools. We give you the cost management. We also look at the enterprise separation. We give you the defense index and security, right at the start. And it's deployed by code. So it's deployed pretty much, it takes minutes instead of years. But essentially, it gives you the solid foundation that we believe, is something quite unique, but to take you on your cloud journey and to accelerate you. And what I'm going to do, obviously, I'm going to pass across to Matt McAvoy. So he's going to talk through our secure landing zone and our design principles behind it to give you a little bit more context. Matt?
Yeah. So just following on from what Microsoft designed in providing that landing zone, providing those guardrails for customers. So at Modality, we work with lots of customers. We have a large hosting environment, which we host lots of kind of intellectual property for customers as well, enterprise customers as well as small customers. And what we found is that when we were onboarding customers or we went with customers, they all had the same issue. They all had the same risks. They all had the same exposure. So what we did effectively within Modalities, we looked at a way of delivering a package solution to a customer or many customers easily, quickly, at scale, with all the relevant guiding principles in place. So those guiding principles, we looked at things like zero trust architecture, defense in depth, secure by design. And we took out all the best components of those architectures and we kind of baked them down and simmered them down to provide a number of different guardrails. And those guardrails were protection, separation, control, and security. And what does that mean? So effectively, what we're trying to do here is that we are giving somebody the ability to effectively take something that's on premise and move it into the cloud with protection, with separation, with all the controls around it and the security that's needed to continue that compliance, and continue that defense of your data, defense of your assets, defense of your apps and services, and then also kind of separate out who gets access to what, when they get access to it, for how long they get access to it, and then effectively the control that kind of comes in and overlays all of that is about what are people doing, what can people deploy, where can they deploy it, and also the granular control across that entire environment. And that entire environment is done at scale. So if you have multiple resources or you have multiple subscriptions, you can basically effectively deploy your management layers, your compliance layers, your defense layers, and your separation layers across your Azure environment. And that includes if you've got an existing environment. And then what we effectively did then is that we went to Microsoft and we spoke with Microsoft, and Microsoft kind of came through and kind of spoke about their landing zone, which I'll hand over to Luke, who could talk through what the Microsoft landing zone is all about.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I mentioned really with the work around the CAF documentation, and this is one of the sort of foundational diagrams around landing zones. But really, this is up to customers and partners to adapt to their needs and make it reality. So the foundational practice is really looking at the core resources necessary to land workloads in Azure. So we've got things like virtual networking to land the workloads in and connect back to other resources within the cloud and within on-premises environments. We've got things like Key Vault to manage certificates, keys, and secrets for the workloads. Things like Azure Monitor to look at logs and metrics, and things like resource groups and subscriptions to control the access control and who has access into the environments. This is very much a baseline that can be developed further. We've put in some work to create more advanced scenarios around this now, but again, this is all made as a sort of a baseline to grow on, and really to provide a foundation of operational management, security automation. So it's been really great working with Modality to align their version of this and a much more developed version built on latest best practice using a security focused model. And it's very much been built with modern tooling involved, things like infrastructure as code, GitHub as a code base, Azure policy to look at governance and automation at scale in their secure landing zones.
Cool, thanks, Luke. So here's the Microsoft. Here's the Modality Secure Landing Zone based on the Microsoft landing zone. And as you can see, we've kind of built out that environment. So we've put in all the relevant key components that tie back to those principles. So we have the protection in place, we have the separation in place, we have the control in place, and then we have the security in place. And that means that effectively we can control what happens. We can control how your data flows in through that environment, and we can control the separation of those kind of tiers, everything from your network, from your applications, right the way through to your storage and data tiers. And each individual resource group has its own roles effectively. So you're not sharing roles across your infrastructure. So your network team don't have access to your storage team. Your storage team don't have access to your security tiers. And that's what that secure landing zone is all about. It's about providing that level of security, providing that protection, providing that governance with policies, taking those kind of those company compliance and that company governance and baking that into the environment, and then deploying those standards across your environment. So this is where we came up with that secure landing zone, and this is effectively what it looks like. And this has all been scripted and is ready to deploy. And as Matt mentioned previously, this can be deployed in minutes. There's some configuration changes that we can make, and then we can kind of deploy that. And you can deploy that across multiple subscriptions, all under one management group. So you're controlling who gets access to what they can do, why they're doing it, when they're doing it, where they're doing it, and also who's doing what. And that's the secure landing zone. That's the model we've used.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. So from our perspective, look, we understand customers are on a journey to the cloud. You may already be, at the end of that journey, or you may be going through that journey. We know in order to get you guys ready, it's about people and processes in your infrastructure. So it's just understanding what road you're on, and it's understanding the winding road, that you're going to have to go down in order to get there. I think one of the things I think we wanted to highlight today was just so you guys can see what we can sort of demonstrate as an organisation to help enterprise mid-market businesses develop that cloud strategy and help you along that journey to get you to the cloud. So we'd love an opportunity to talk to you at some point if that comes up. If anybody's got any questions or around obviously the secure landing zone, it would be great. I don't know if we've got any questions from anybody. No?
I think if people have put questions in the moderator window, we can always answer them at a later time. We can do that through email. We have your email addresses, so if you do have any questions, we can always kind of follow that up with you.
Matt, from our perspective, obviously with the secure landing zone, why would businesses take up a secure landing zone? Why should they take it from us?
I think the idea for the secure landing zone is Azure can be quite complex if you do it ad hoc. So if you build it in different times, different layers with different people involved, you can have something that is widely known as accidental architecture. no one fully understands what it is that's being built. No one understands why it's being built. When you start kind of getting down into the weeds, you can find lots of different problems with that environment. Sergio touched on it before. One of the main things we see is build shock. So somebody's come in, deployed a VM, the VM's at the highest spec because it's easy to do, and then before you know it, it's been left on running 24/7 for the next month. You then get a bill for a couple of £1,000, and everyone is effectively sheepishly standing around with their hands in their pockets, not wanting to own up to something that's been deployed accidentally. This is where the secure landing zone comes in. It's protecting you from those kind of accidental architecture mistakes. It's providing you with an area that you can take something, whether that you're trying to develop or you're trying to test, and you can take that and push it into an environment, and you don't have to worry about whether or not it's got monitoring. You don't have to worry whether or not it's got access to your on-premise environment. You don't have to worry if it's got the relevant security in place. You don't have to worry where it's being deployed to, because effectively we've built those policies in to stop you deploying your data into the US or to somewhere else around the globe. And that's what the secure landing zone is all about. It's about providing you with the guardrails. It's about providing you with the principles that nobody necessarily knows. But we can do this at scale, and we can build it out for you. And again, as well, it's easy to set up and it's easy to tear down. So if you get something deployed and you've got something in your resource groups, you've got control, you've got visibility, you've got separation, and then you have all of those kind of other design principles and those kind of architecture principles wrapped around it. So the guardrails are there, the costs are there, and you're protected from internal, external, and monetary accidents.
Well said, Matt. I will probably just add one quick thing. I think it's the inner message is there that is agnostic, right? Almost right. If you one of those customers is starting to think, okay, but I didn't see any specific workload mentioned on this, right? It will attach to that, right? Whether you're migrating a server, a SQL database, or you're adopting new platform services, this can still align with those scenarios. So it's more about, again, a better understanding what you're trying to achieve, aligning what specific workloads and components should sit in Azure, and then apply this set of guardrails that Matt was talking about, and then take it from there, even for other potential opportunities to innovate, because then once you're in the cloud, you have that opportunity. The investments we make, are comparable to GDPs of some countries, in these platforms. So, I think that sets the tone quite well for what you could achieve in the future once you're there. So, well, I should go with saying that thanks, guys, for having me, and good job today. So this was useful for who was in attendance and maybe watch it later.
Thank you, Sergio. I appreciate that, and also for those who are in attending today. Obviously, we do have another series of webinars coming up that delve a little bit deeper into the cloud adoption framework. The next one is obviously a week today, and it's all around strategy. So getting you to the cloud and understanding how to get there and what to do and what not to do. So if you think that's of value, please feel free to register on the link below. But again, thank you everybody for your time. I hope you found it useful. Yeah, and we'll look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.